Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminolly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, horror, I'm doing a review of The Wasp Factory by Iain Banks. So this is a book I have a long history with, having first read it when I was a teenager. And I was trying to figure out how old I was when I read it. So I remember buying it, so not this copy, I bought this one more recently, but the same edition as this, from a second-hand bookshop in the town that I lived in. And I think it was around the time that Esmerelda Street, Banks's fourth novel as Iain Banks, but fifth novel that he published, came out, because I remember ordering that in from the library, having devoured this and then read his subsequent three books, which were Walking on Glass, The Bridge, and Consider Phlebas, or Phlebas, I never know how you pronounce that. So that puts it at about 1987 when I was 14. And, you know, so that's 35 years ago. But it made a real impact on me, this book. And I think it was probably one of the first more literary type of horror novels that I read. And I absolutely loved it. And I've just finished rereading it and I really enjoyed it again. There are definitely things about it that are, not as amazing as I thought they were first time around. And I think there's, reading it with a modern eye, there's definitely some questions about representation and things like that in the book, which are, I don't know if they're questionable or not, but that gave me pause in a way that they didn't when I first read the book. But I still think it's fantastic. So it is about a young teenage boy, or kind of, well, he's not young, but a teenager in the Scottish, I don't know if it's the Highlands. He lives on an island off the coast of Scotland, called Frank, and he lives with his father, who's completely nuts and eccentric, and does things like knows the measurements of all of their bits of furniture, and randomly quizzes Frank on how big things are and that kind of thing. So Frank is so it's written from Frank's perspective, and he is a very troubled character. He's got a brother, an older brother, who's moved away and is violently insane and has been imprisoned, and has now got out of prison. I can't remember actually if it's prison or like a mental institution. Anyway, he's out having committed some crimes. He's now out and he's heading back. And throughout the book, you get these phone calls between Frank and his brother as the brother gets gradually closer and closer. And the other thing you get is Frank looking back on his life, and telling you about all the terrible things that he has done. So there are many terrible things in this book, not least huge amounts of animal cruelty. So there are there is endless animal cruelty in this book. So if that's something that does not appeal to you, I definitely recommend not reading the book. The Wasp Factory, and I won't go into details of exactly what it is, because that would be something of a spoiler, but it's something that involves wasps not having a very happy time, shall we say. And Frank's violent tendencies do not restrict themselves to animals, and he tells you, fairly early on in the book, that he has murdered a number of other children. And as the book continues and you learn more about his past, he describes those murders, which are fascinating, I think I would say, in that they are incredibly, his method, each of his methods of murder is incredibly bizarre and grotesque, and it felt an awful lot like a Roald Dahl book to me at times. That kind of random bizarre cruelty you get in Roald Dahl books. You definitely get that in The Wasp Factory. And it all builds up to a conclusion with an ending which I still really like. It's got a really interesting twist at the end that puts a different perspective on many things in the book. But it also leaves a lot of things unresolved. And you are left with this sense that there's just this sense of just having witnessed some very, very strange and violent and dark things for essentially no real reason. And that, I think, it might sound like a criticism of the book, but it's almost a strength of it, I think, in that it's just about a book about how the world is a very strange place. and there are many very strange people in it. But Frank as a character, despite the horrible things he does, really drew me in as the narrator. And I wouldn't say you root for him exactly, but you're definitely fascinated by what he is telling you, or I was anyway. And you really want the mysteries of his life to be resolved, which some but not all of them are as the book progresses. What's fascinating about this edition of the book, and this was, I think, one of the things that appealed to me as a teenager and made me pick it up in the first place, is that there are many, many reviews, both on the back of the book and inside in the first few pages. And I don't know if they've done this in modern editions, but the publishers have not limited themselves to the good reviews. So you get reviews on the back, like this one from the Financial Times. A gothic horror story of quite exceptional quality, macabre, bizarre, and quite impossible to put down, from the Financial Times. But when you open it up, you get things like this one from the Sunday Express. A silly, gloatingly sadistic and grisly yarn of a family of Scots lunatics, one of whom tortures small creatures. A bit better written than most horror hokum, but really just the lurid literary equivalent of a video nasty. And this did come out in 1984, so at the height of the video nasty scare in the UK. Let's find another one. If a nastier, more vicious or distasteful novel appears this spring, I shall be surprised. That was from the Mail on Sunday. I would say so that the Mail on Sunday and the Sunday Express, for people who do not know British newspapers, are incredibly conservative newspapers. They're kind of almost like the British newspaper equivalent of Fox News. So yeah, definitely a book that divided critics when it came out, but it is now a book that is very, very much respected. And Banks went on to write a number of other books before his tragic death a few years ago that are very, very well thought of, and this is I think no less well thought of than most of his other books. So it launched a very successful literary career, and he was named, I forget which poll it was, but there was some one of those lists of great British authors, 50 greatest British authors since 1945, I think, and he was on that list. So it is a fantastic book. It's very, very readable. It's written in a very simple way, despite the complexities of the backstory and things like that. The actual prose is very simple, so it's a joy to read. And yeah, wonderfully grotesque and bizarre. Definitely one I would recommend for horror fans, but also for non-horror fans, because there's a lot of very interesting stuff going on in this book. So yeah, do let me know in the comments if you've read this one. Let me know if you are a fan of Iain Banks, as I am. As I say, after reading this, I devoured everything I could find by him, but in later years have kind of slowed down on reading his books. So I do have a number of his books that I haven't got around to, so I do need to read those, including his sci-fi. So he wrote, as Iain M. Banks, he wrote a series of sci-fi books, which I've read a couple of, but I need to dig into those and read more of those as well. So yeah, that's it for this review. As always, let me know what you thought in the comments, and also, as always, thank you very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well, hope you're really good stuff, and I will speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.